that's okay. Hello, Amit. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yes. Okay, so here we are for our another event. N- Actually, I can hear you. Hold on, let me do that. Okay, there you go. Okay, welcome Amit, all the way from Miami, our expert. He's running all in Miami team based out of Compass, helped so many people moving in and out of Florida area. So this podcast is specifically target how we can start investing in Florida real estate market. What are the numbers to look for? Which are the best communities, areas? What are the typical price point? All those questions. How to manage those properties? So that's why we have our Florida expert Amit with us. So before any further ado, I'll ask Amit to introduce to our audience as we are already going live on our channel. Welcome, Amit.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So a bit about me. I live in Miami. I'm 53. I've lived here since I was 4 years old, so 49 years. So I've seen a lot of different changes throughout the years. Been in real estate 18 years, did finance in college, and worked for a hedge fund company for a while. So those are things that hopefully will give your viewers a little bit more comfort knowing what I say. Um, it's over the last couple of years since COVID first started, we've had a ton of people moving here. And excuse me, all these questions you're asking, we get asked all the time. So, however you want to ask the questions, I'll be happy to answer whichever way you want.
Yes, Amit. So basically, it'll be interactive. We'll have a lot of people joining in. So typical question. Let's say I want to start. I want to start my journey. I'm based out of New York. I'm based out of Toronto. It's really you know the weather how it is. I want to escape from the snowbird basically. So what should be my ideal city I should look into? That is not that heavy on my budget also, or I can do some sort of a Airbnb. So I want to do two. Like I want to hit two things when one shot. So what should my strategy? Which should be the city I should focus on the first thing?
So it depends on a few things. First, you have to determine your budget, right? You have to say, okay, I have this much money I want to spend. Another thing is you have to decide whether you're going to be visiting here. Some people that do Airbnbs, they like to have their investment pay for their vacation time here, and they want to do that as well. So it depends. Miami, a lot of people from outside Miami know Miami as just Miami, but Miami, just like Toronto or other areas, there are multiple different hyper local areas that we have. So the first question, how much do you want to spend? Next thing is, how often do you want to visit? Do you ever want to visit here?
Mhm. Makes sense, right? So let's say I want to like spend 3 months when it's really the crazy winters, month of December, January, February, and what type of suggestions you have? Like, what should be the typical price point we should be hitting into?
So, okay, so price points, Miami-Dade County has multiple different areas. You can buy properties for say 200,000 to 100 plus million. So it depends what you're looking for. Also, another thing is some people want to come here just for ROI, and some
Mm-hmm.
people want to come here for a combination, maybe a little bit ROI, a little bit staying here, and some just want it to be fully like it pays for them to come here a lot. So the typical price point we get a lot of people now. People move to Miami for two reasons, or they buy
Okay.
properties in Miami for two reasons. One is they're going to make Miami their permanent residence. So, like if they're in the Northeast, New York, Chicago, LA, California, they're moving here to save on taxes, right? So, besides taxes, our weather's pretty good for most people. Most people really like our weather. So, if they're from the Northeast, they prefer not having snow and something those type of things. Also, another reason people are moving here, which is the same category of people, they're what are called sort of like nomads. These are people that all of a sudden can work remotely. So they can go from place to place to place. So they can buy a place in Miami. They could live here 6 months and 1 day. So they get this tax savings. And then they
Okay.
can travel throughout the rest of the year. So they'll get paid if they're working in New York or California, that's where their job is. They're getting higher income there. They're able to live in Miami for less money, and they're also able to travel as well. So those would be like short-term rental properties. And then the other type of people that we have are the investors. The investors are the people that are going to like buy short-term rentals like you had mentioned. So those price points are probably going to be like mid 400s, like 450 on up to, we have some higher end short-term rentals that are 1 million, 2 million plus. So we have a big combination of different properties. And this is in Miami, right? This isn't like outside of Miami, because no
Okay.
matter where you live in the world, most people, just like they know Toronto, they know Miami. If you have a property in Miami, it's like a big deal, just like
Mm-hmm.
Toronto.
Makes sense, right? So it's like there's a lot of options for viewers. Price point, as you mentioned, from 200,000, we can go till 1 million, right? So let's talk about the investment part. So somebody is looking for better ROI. They invested in there. How is the landlord-tenant boards? How are the regulations? If somebody is not paying the rent, is it like landlord favorable or it's tenant favorable? Do you have insider on that?
Yeah. So we probably our team we have 5 people on our team plus me, and we
Okay.
did probably about 70 plus rentals last year.
Oh.
So we have an idea of how it is. It
Mm-hmm.
depends on a few things, right? It
Okay.
depends, first of all, it does favor the tenant more than the landlord, but there are ways
Okay.
to overcome that. If you have a strong lease in place, if you hire an attorney, and we could recommend whoever you need, but
Okay.
if we if you have a good lease up front, if you look at a few things, like typically people that are going to be renting, you as a landlord, you want to get at least first month, and you probably don't want first month, last month in security. You probably want first month and 2 security deposits. Then you're going to also have a clause in the contract where if an item is over a certain amount of cost, or the landlord pays it, but if it's below, the tenant will pay for it.
Oh,
So
nice.
there are different things that you can do. Also, our market in Miami, our rental market, has it really has exploded. Like 2 years ago, the rents in some places are half of what they used to be now. So you can make some mistakes now because the rents have gone up so much. Prices have gone up as well, but it's not as hard as it may seem like it was in the past.
Okay, makes sense, right? So Amit, continue on that. We have a question, right? Which city is the best to invest in Florida? And what are the prices? Are the prices expected to go down? How is the real estate situation there? And there are two questions basically. First is which is the best city to invest in Florida based on the numbers, based on the location, temperature, weather, and the rules and regulations.
So that's a good question. So that depends, right? When we think of investing, we think of short-term investing or long-term investing.
Mm-hmm.
And many times the short-term investment property is going to be different than the long-term property, right?
Definitely.
It's like if you buy something on the ocean or in the water, no matter where it is in the world, if it has a great view, long-term, that's going to do very well. But short-term, it may not do as well because it's very expensive, the insurance is expensive, and you can't get it back like that. So for short term, there are multiple areas. So one up and coming area, and it's to Miami, a lot of people know it, but people outside Miami don't know it that much. It's called Edgewater or Brickell. These are two
Edgewater.
different areas.
Mm-hmm.
These I'll give you an example of these areas. These are like young professionals. They're like in finance or crypto, or they're there's a word for them. It's called a Henry. A Henry is a high earner, not rich yet. So these are people that are younger, they make good money, but they haven't been doing it long enough. So all these places are going to have nice clubs, they're going to have nice bars, they're going to have nice shopping, restaurants, and all these other things. And in the past, these areas weren't that desirable, those areas. But now, as things, because developers build where things are cheaper, all of a sudden they develop them and they get better. So now, even though those areas are still very good opportunities, you still have very expensive properties in those areas as well.
Okay. Hmm. So it's like it's basically you are recommending about Edgewater, where the professionals are living. So that's a sort of a best investment because it's a lot of rental potential is there. So another question related to that: how is the real estate market in Florida? How is the inflation, interest rate? You know, right? And inflation is already 9.1 in US. The same story we have in Canada also, and interest rates are going up. Is it impacting the Florida real estate market? What is the prediction on the price? I know we don't have the crystal ball, but based on your experience, how are things there in the ground realities? Do you want to share about that?
Yeah, sure. So, a question we get asked all the time, and one of the things too, as you know, in real estate, people a lot of times want a generalized answer, and that's not really the best answer because Miami-Dade County, South Florida, is much different than the rest of the country, right?
Okay.
People are moving here for weather, working remotely, saving a lot on taxes. So we have these ultra high net worth people that are buying properties here, and a big percentage of them are paying cash. I actually, on my Instagram stories yesterday, I shared a post where it showed the percentage of people paying cash for $1 million plus properties. And it was well into the 50, 60% were cash. And not everyone is a million plus buyer. In Toronto, maybe, but Miami is we have both sides, but we have a lot of cash transactions. We've always had a lot of cash transactions here. So even though the interest rate is going up, it's getting absorbed a little bit. So it's not hurting us as much because there's a lot of cash. And even if there wasn't as much cash, people are still saving money because they're saving on their taxes here. So, like overall, our market has slowed down a bit. Our rents have gone down a little bit, but compared to the rest of the country, like I'll give you an example. I showed a property for 11.8 million, and it's been on the market for 1 week, and they already have an offer, and my
Oh,
buyer has to put an offer for it to get sold. A few years ago, this same area in Miami called Pinecrest, that property 3 years ago would have been 4 million,
oh,
you
that's
know?
like
So
huge
the
difference.
market is changing, but it's not like 100%. It's gone up so much, but it's gone down a little bit.
So this means there are potential for buyers to have the opportunities to grab those deals where they can negotiate on the conditions, on the price. So I would say that's a good option. Somebody who's looking to buy at this time.
Yeah, it's a lot of times, and I'm not sure how often you get to ask this, but a lot of times people, these buyers will tell me, just call me when they keep lowering the price to this price. And I'm like, that's too late. The best way to get the biggest discount is to have your agent or you research maybe who the owner is, check their social, see if their life has changed, see if they're moving, if they got another job, if they've got a kid, whatever it is, whatever you can find, and then offer what you're going to offer. You're not going to get the biggest discount once they lower the price a lot. You're going to get the biggest discount when it's a million, you offer 600 and they take 720, because if they offered that $1 million property for 720, they'd get multiple offers and it would sell for 8.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, right? That's good. So we have another question, right? It's about can someone who's on doesn't have status in US, can they buy home there? So basically, if somebody is from Canada, So is it a possibility to buy home in US or basically in Florida? Is that what's the state
Yeah,
regulations on that?
it happens very often, and, one of the things too, Canadians, are favorably helped with their credit because a lot of lenders here in the US will use the Canadian credit just like as if they were in the US. So, it's very easy to get financing here if you're Canadian, um, yeah, there are no regulations. It makes sense to just get to know what, like, some of these costs will be, taxes, insurance and all that, just like in any place. But as far as having the ability to buy or to finance, it's fairly easy.
Okay, so that's there. And Amit, as we are talking about that, what is a typical down payment we have to do? Let's say we are buying a property of 800,000, just an example. So how much down payment we have to do as a Canadian, not as a US, right? So like, is there any typical guidelines for that? You can do 10%, 20%. What's
Yeah,
the number?
tip
Yeah.
so on average, and this doesn't have to be the case because we have many different each lender has their own programs, right? So
Okay.
depending on that person's credit, their net worth, the
Mm-hmm.
property, and all those things. But on average, when we get a Canadian buying a property here, they're typically putting about 25% down, you know?
25%. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Irrespective of the price point, it's a million or half a million. So you just need to put 25%. That's basically general rule of thumb, right?
Yeah, on average, you're gonna have some closing costs. So, if it's a single family home, it's probably gonna be 3 to 5%. If it's a condo, like an apartment, it'll be less because
Okay.
some of those fees are determined in your monthly maintenance fee.
Okay. And then what is typically purchase process? So let's say somebody from Canada is calling you. They want to buy in Florida. What will be the first step they should be aware of? Obviously, in Canada, what we do, we have mortgage. Then you like the property, you put an offer, and then it went under contract. So you have lawyers involved. So can you explain what's the typically steps involved in buying a property as a Canadian?
Yeah, good question. So, because we know a lot of people know Miami just like Miami, but they don't know Miami as Coconut Grove or South Beach or Brickell or Edgewater and stuff. Our team has spent like the last 15, 16 months creating all these hyper local areas of
Okay.
Miami. So, we have like 40 or 50 different areas. So, we created a website. It's called miamineighborhoodguide.com. So miamineighborhoodguide.com. So I would
Okay.
suggest if this Canadian is or whoever it is thinking about buying in Miami, they would go to miamineighborhoodguide.com. Then what
Okay.
they would do, each area has a little recap of the area, tells you about the area, five things you may not know about the area, where to eat, where to get dessert, things to do, and then we have a neighborhood video of each area because
Nice.
we really want everyone to really know what they're getting into, right? Because living in Canada or someone else somewhere else, we get these ideas in our head without really knowing based on what a friend or family member, what we saw on YouTube tells us. But really getting to know what you want is the first step. The next step
Mm-hmm.
is if you're financing and you need help finding a lender, we could, recommend a few lenders that have worked with Canadians a lot or wherever it is.
Okay.
The next step after they get approved. So when they're doing this approval process, it'll probably be similar to yours, probably tax returns, bank statements, they'll
Yes.
pull your credit, and there are different types of approvals. So that would be one thing they would do. Then we would start sending you properties. We tell you like if you give us an idea of what you're looking for, we can share with you multiple areas because you don't probably know as well as we do. And we're in
Okay.
the beginning, we're probably going to send you too many just so we can see what you don't like. We're going to get a sense of what you want. We'd rather send you too much in the beginning to not take away stuff that you may be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
After that, after you find the property, you could do one or two things. One, we can do a FaceTime video with you, or we can record the property for you.
Okay.
Or two, I mean, obviously you could come here if you'd like. After that, after you like the property and you want to purchase the property, we send you an electronic document. It's probably going to be like 15, 16 pages a lot of basics, like probably there. Here, the agent writes the contract. The buyer could have an attorney look over whatever they want for the closing and stuff. So, say you're looking at a property, you like it, we look at it, and you're like, you
Okay.
want to put an offer. So the terms I would put on the offer besides the price, you would put like your escrow deposit, your down payment that you're giving. So typically in Miami, if you're financing the escrow deposit, so let's say it's a $500,000 property, right? You're
Okay.
buying 500,000 and say you're financing. Within 3 days of your offer getting accepted, typically, and this is a negotiable item, but typically you would give 5% escrow deposit. So within 3 days, you would wire 25,000 if the property is 500,000, and
Okay.
then the remainder would be at closing. It's a negotiable item. You can do it in one payment, split it up. That 5% could be more or less, but typically it's 5%. If the person is paying cash, it would typically be 10%. So it would be 50,000. Um, so the next thing you would have is inspections. You would have, so during that inspection time, so typically inspections is going to be like 7, 10, 15 days, depending on, the property and the person's availability. During that time, that buyer could back out for whatever reason they want. Even if they're like, I don't want the house, I don't want it anymore, they could back out for any reason.
Okay.
Also, if it's a building or a place that has an association, you typically have to apply to the association within 5 days. Okay. Also, so money out of pocket is money for your escrow deposit. Money would be also for your application. Probably would be 100, $200, something like that. The next thing you would pay for is if you're financing it, the appraisal. The appraisal could be 500 to $900, depending on your lender. Sometimes the lender will do it for free. And then the inspection of the property. And like you had mentioned before, now because the market is opening up, you're able to do inspections, appraisal, contingencies, and stuff like that. In the past, if you tried to do that, you wouldn't get the property. So now within that inspection time, the inspection is probably going to cost, I don't know, 400 to 1,000, depending on how big the property is and stuff.
Okay.
Then what you have, the next thing on the contract after is it's called a finance contingency period. This is if you're financing. This is when you get the full final loan approval, and that's typically in 20 to 30 days. And then closing is usually in 45 days. To do a closing in Miami, you can use a title company or you can use an attorney. But most of the work is being done by the real estate agents, and the attorney is just doing the closing, or they're making sure that whatever clauses are in there are the correct ones.
Makes sense, right? So just to summarize, the people who have just joined in, we were discussing what is a typically process for buying a home or investment in Florida. So as I just summarize, as Amit have already discussed, the first thing is getting qualified for your mortgage. Typically, for Canadian, it's around 25% down payment. Once is that's done, the properties, obviously their team will share the properties you selected, online or offline way of doing it. Once the property is under contract, so you do basically escrow deposit, typically is around 5% for a half a million, and 10% if you are buying cash. And once it's there, you put your conditions can be on the appraisals and on the inspections. And we were talking about the typically closing period, looking around 45 days, and then there's a lawyers involved for the title searches. And Amit, just a question on that. Do we have like this? You have any? I heard there are title search companies also, or like you need to go through a lawyer for title, because in Canada we use like lawyers do the same work of title searching.
Yeah, it's the same thing here. The title company or the attorney can do it. It's like $200-300. It's not a big process. So yeah, either of them can do it.
Okay. So, Amit, what about the closing cost? Basically, we know there's a lawyer fees, the title searches fees, some adjustments, and do you have any land transfer tax, all those city fees involved in that?
So the fee that we have is for the seller. If you're
for the
so
seller?
say you're selling $1 million property in Miami-Dade County, you
Okay.
would take the price times 0.006. So it would be, $6,000
Okay.
for $1 million property. That would be paid by the seller, not the buyer.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So seller will pay the price for the closing cost, and that fee will go to the city. Actually, in Canada, we have buyers paying for that cost.
Yeah, it's different in the US in different parts. So both sides will have their closing costs, but the transfer fee will be paid by the seller in Miami-Dade County.
Oh, Sarah, that's interesting, right? So
Yeah.
let's move on. We have a couple of other questions in line. I think we already discussed. There's a question: what is the minimum down payment I need to buy a property in Florida? Can we buy with as minimum as 5% down? So Amit, is that a possibility? Can somebody buy a property with 5% down? Let's say half a million. Can we do that?
It's a possibility if the person is gonna make this their primary residence. If
Okay,
it's
as
an
a primary.
investment, it's not going to work.
Then you have to do around 25%.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So it's like, but what about Canadian buying in US? Will that be considered as a residence there, or like how we treat it? Like how that will be treated as investment? Or what will be that?
So, I mean, we've had people that have transferred jobs. So say you have a job in Canada and they have that same company in the US and they
Okay.
get transferred here, they work here, they buy a residence here, it's their primary residence. You don't have to be a US citizen to buy a property.
Makes sense. That's a very valid answer, actually. Okay, that's what makes sense. So there is a possibility to buy a property on 5%, but it's very scenario dependent.
Right, exactly.
Okay, okay. Let's move on. We have another question, right? How flexible are the lenders in terms of buying, being a Canadian citizen? Minimum down payment we already discussed. So the question is, see, everybody is curious about the mortgage part. So how like flexibility about the lenders? I know there's a range of lenders available in states and Florida. So how flexible are they? Like I know the credit score, they'll see the job, but what about Canadian status?
Yeah, so it's they use the same as the US.
Okay.
So lenders are more difficult than they were 15 years ago, but they're each year they get a little bit easier, because after their crash they had in like '09, 2010 and 8 and stuff like that, Canadians, they look at favorably because they look at your credit, they look at everything. We,
Okay.
we have it's common for us to have lenders come to our office meetings and say if they're Canadian, it's the same exact thing.
Same exactly. Okay. Very valid, right? So let's move on. So we have another questions, right? I think we discuss uh, about the paperwork, right? So if somebody is buying a property, everything is done. So do they need to be present in there to sign the paperwork on the closing day, or it can be done online?
Yeah, it could be online, so you don't have to do it here. There are
Okay.
things that you have to get like notarized there, or you have, I guess, maybe an embassy or something where papers are signed, like the closing statements. But
Okay.
most of the paperwork can be done. You don't. The bottom line is you don't have to come to Miami to buy a property in Miami.
Okay. That's not the thing, right? Okay, that's good to know, right? And then what is the best communities to invest in Florida? In Miami, I think we discussed about the Edgewater. So let's say somebody like who want like a flat home, something like with the big backyard, double car garage, not the flat thing, right? So what is the typically best communities for them, and what's the price point for it?
So there are different parts of Miami-Dade County where you can get like obviously a lot more for your money. So one of the areas is called Homestead.
Homestead,
Homestead is, if I have to say, everyone knows Miami Beach, right? Everyone knows where
of
Miami
course.
Beach and South Beach is. So Homestead is probably about 45 minutes from Miami Beach, give or take, depending on traffic. And over there, you can probably spend 500 and get a single family home, um, with 3 or 4 bedrooms, good size yard. That would be something that someone could buy. Homestead is a little bit further south than other areas, but if you have no one, if you don't have any ties to the community, it doesn't really matter where you live and I mean where you buy, as long as it's a good area, right?
So makes sense. So that's a good one, right? So how's the weather right now in Florida? Is it like really hot? Is a tourist coming, or like how's the? Have you visited South beaches? And now, how's it overall?
Yeah, so today it's been cloudy and rainy, but our best weather in South Florida is from November to the end of March. That's the
End of
best
March.
time.
Best. Okay.
During the rest of the year, it's good, but it's gonna be humid, it's gonna be hot. One of the misconceptions that people have is that it gets really hot in Miami, but it never gets, and I know this is different because we do degrees rather than we do
Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit rather than Celsius, but,
Mm-hmm.
the Fahrenheit here is never gonna get, like, higher than, like, 92, 93. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius,
Okay.
but it gets way cool. It doesn't get that hot compared to a lot of other parts in the country. It's just humid. So the weather is it's decent. One of the good things is we get a lot of even the days it rains, there's gonna be sunshine for most of the day, you
So
know?
it's like a sunshine city.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's another question we have, like it's regarding the commercial properties. Is it what is the flexibility of buying a multifamily? Do you have any recommendations or tips, right? So it's like it's treated same like a residential property buying in Florida?
It's harder because there's more competition for that,
Okay.
and prices because prices have gone up so much. It's tough. If you're an investor and you're looking to buy a property and you're putting a low down payment, the odds are someone else is going to be paying cash and paying more
Okay.
than what you're paying. Commercial is a little bit more difficult. Commercial
Okay.
meaning multifamily residential.
Okay, makes sense. And what about the pre-construction projects? Do you have opportunities like that also, or like what is your recommendation? Or it's only resale, or it's like you can, as pre-construction in the sense like you can do pre-sales and then you get possession in the future. We have so many projects here in Toronto, in Canada, and particularly. What about in Miami or in Florida? Do you have those options available?
Yeah, we have a lot of pre-construction properties. Most of them now, because a lot of people are into doing short-term rentals because of Airbnb and Verbo and these other companies. These developers in the past in Miami, you couldn't, it would be very difficult to do a short-term rental because Miami, Florida, our biggest industry is tourism. So we have
Okay.
a very big hotel um, agency where they fight against it. But so now what the developers do is they build a hotel component into the building so people can buy these short-term rentals. That's probably the hottest thing that we have these investments where people can they rent them from 1 to 3 days and as many times as they want. They'll be in these areas where there's nice stores, restaurants where people want to visit, and you can get them for probably from 450 on up in price.
So those are like you are referring around like a time sharing basis, something like that. Like you can
No,
rent
you
them
own
for.
them. It's like
Oh.
an apartment. You own them, and what you're gonna do is you're probably gonna hire a management company that
Okay.
would take care of everything, and then you're gonna factor that into what you make. But they're good because as time keeps passing, more and more people want these, and long term, it's gonna rents are going up. They're always gonna keep going up. So whatever price you pay, your short-term rental rates are going to keep going up. So it'll be both a good short-term and long-term investment.
Makes sense, right? And what are your recommendations based on that? Is it better to go for short-term rental in the Miami area, or it's recommended to go for long-term stable tenants? Or compared to the price point, city regulations, how is it?
So it depends on the person, that person's mindset, right? Some people can deal with doing a lot of things, and some people don't want to be bothered at all, right?
Okay.
So the person that doesn't want to get bothered at all, could do one or two things. They can buy and then just have that long-term tenant for a, a long, long time, or they can buy a short-term rental, make sure they hire a good, um, property management company, which we could give you good recommendations, and then try
Okay.
and be, you'd obviously have to spend some of your profits on that, but then you'll have less to deal with.
Okay.
Um, as far as like long term, I would probably recommend something on the water if you're going to buy something long term, because no matter how the market goes up or down, people are always going to want a good view in Miami Beach.
Very valid, well said. Actually, that's how it is. So people are ready to pay for the price point. They don't care. It's always like it's a location, right? So that's a very valid thing, right? So let's move on. We have more questions, right? Uh, so do mortgage brokers in US guarantee 100% approval using income boosting, similar to what we used in Canada? So it's about more of a pre-approval thing, right? So do you have like pre-approval options in Miami also, like before you go into purchase, right? And it's like 100% guarantee, like once pre-approval is done, the deal will go through.
Yeah, so we have a few different programs. And so we have these programs where you could make a finance deal like a cash sale.
Okay.
Um, typically, so that's one thing. And then also we have something called a DU underwriting, desktop underwriting, where they
Okay.
pull your credit, they pull everything, and they can guarantee it pretty much. It's not 100% because anyone could do anything. You can buy a car or something, or you can do something to obviously ruin that pre-approval. But they're pretty confident with the things that they come up with the lenders.
Okay. So basically the same process, like the same
Yeah,
pre-approval process works out, right? Makes sense,
yeah.
right? Okay. So it's saying the your voice is low. Okay, maybe you're just setting it up, right? So there's a feedback. So let's maybe some issues with the mic, right?
Oh, is it mine?
Yeah, no, no, yours is okay. That's what it's saying, right?
Oh, okay.
The, there's another question which is coming up. Why Florida is people recommending compared to other basically states? What is so special about Florida, right? If somebody have to move it, so what is a basically selling point or attractive point for Florida?
Yeah, so I think there are multiple reasons. One is our weather. It doesn't snow here. I've lived here since 1973. I've never seen snow, so that's good. And if you want snow, which is great, then you travel and get your snow out of your way. We don't have to worry about like doing a lot of prep and going to work and doing all that. Another thing is our prices are still relatively low compared to
Okay.
comparable places in the world. If you compare New York, Toronto, Chicago, LA, and other areas, Miami's going to be cheaper. Our rents
Hmm.
have caught up, but our prices are still below. Also, Miami, we have one of the things that's really nice about Miami, and I keep comparing it to Toronto, is because it's similar. We have a lot of ethnicity here. We have a lot of people from other countries here, and we
Okay.
have like a melting
Diversity.
pot where so much different food, culture, all these things that you don't have to travel far. Also, we're right by. If you want to go on a cruise, you can just hop on. You can go to Miami Beach and go on a cruise, and you'll be out. And you can think about doing it that same day and doing it. We're close to South America. We're close to many, many different areas. There's quite a bit good about Miami. There are things bad about Miami, just like everywhere. It gets hot, it gets humid. We have mosquitoes. I did a video on the 9 worst things about living in Miami, but I probably can tell you 1,000 things that are good about living in Miami.
Makes sense, right? So valid, well said. So Amit, there's another one compared to Miami, right? How is it compared to the real estate market of Orlando? What is your recommendations on that?
Compared to Orlando, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Orlando it's a good market. It's a different type of buyer. The person that's looking for Orlando, and it's changing too. Orlando is becoming super saturated, In the past, it was such an opportunity, right? But now they're building and building and building, and prices are getting higher. Orlando's a great area. If you like Disney World and you wanna go there a lot, then it might be a valid place to purchase in. You know, there's nothing wrong with Orlando. I love Orlando. But Miami is more that international type buyer that is looking for the culture, long-term growth, and would like visiting here often. You know, Orlando is more for that person that likes Disney World and those other theme parks and stuff, and are renting to maybe college kids and stuff like that. Whereas Miami, you're renting to the professionals, the people that are probably making more money. And both places are great, but just totally different things.
Okay, so it's as per you, it's like comparing oranges to apple. So it's different
Totally.
market, different price point altogether. And so what about Canadian who are looking to invest? If you just a ballpark numbers, what is the best ROI? It's investing in those areas where you have Disney theme park, or you are close to beaches, where you have more diversity. What makes more sense on
So
ROI
this
perspective?
so this is what I would recommend. If you're looking for a short-term return on investment, I would recommend investing in Orlando.
Okay.
Just being as honest as I can with you. If you're looking to get long-term ROI, and so the ROI that you're getting is from the appreciation of the property. You're gonna get a much higher appreciation on the property, from buying a property in Miami to selling it compared to doing that in Orlando. Orlando, you're gonna make more money month to month, for sure, guaranteed. In Miami, you're gonna make less, but you're gonna make it at the tail end of the
Okay.
investment.
Makes sense. So is it like more of a cash flow versus appreciation?
Exactly. That's a better way of saying it. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. So definitely the two of the markets. I think when we met, we drove to both of the markets. What we realized the difference was, it's our experience. Miami was more happening, the more beach life. It's more diversity, more people traveling. It's like a lot of things to do about. And then Orlando was it was like more of a flat, lot of hotels, and then obviously the Disney theme park, that was attractive feature. And then when we saw the price point, obviously we were attracted to Orlando real estate market at that time. So that's why, there was another question also on that. So what is your price point? It's good to know. And how, like, this is the we are talking about the south part of Florida, right? So what were the Cape Coral and those areas, Jacksonville? We have Tampa. A lot of growth in those areas. Do you have any thoughts on those?
Yeah, Tampa is probably one of the hottest, markets in the country. So prices have gone up tremendously. Tampa is a very nice place to live. It's a nice
Okay.
area. I wasn't there long ago. I visited there, and one of my friends got married. And when we have these celebrities move to these places, so like Tom Brady, he's new. He went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers football. The quarterback. I don't know how many people in Canada know American football, but Tom Brady is a huge personality. He went to the
Mm-hmm.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When he went to that team, then Tampa all of a sudden got such a big boost. So that
Okay.
happens a lot. And Tampa, again, people are moving to Tampa like they are moving to Miami, but it's a lower price point, but they're still getting a lot of the advantages of Miami. Tampa, I would say Tampa is like probably a mix between Miami and Orlando would be
Okay.
Tampa.
So it has same opportunities, same university, college, tourist coming there, a lot of opportunities. That's what you want to say.
Yes, exactly.
Makes sense. It's a good point, right? So let's move on. So we have another question. Which city is better for investing in vacation rentals?
So it depends. Orlando, typically the normal way of investing would be better. Miami, short-term rental would probably be better.
Makes sense, right? So, Amit, is it like those regulations are very city specific or it's a state specific, the short term rentals or long term rentals?
It's very confusing, to be honest with you. Each area of Miami-Dade County is different. And so because it's so confusing, the developers are just building their buildings with the hotel component because you have to be careful. Some of these properties that were okay in the past that you can do short-term rentals, these communities are changing things. These apartment buildings that allowed it, all of a sudden their areas aren't allowing it. Because imagine this: you live in a building and they allow, say there's 20 floors in the building, and they
Okay.
allow short-term rentals, and maybe 50% are residents and 50% are short-term rentals. When people go on vacation and they rent for a short time, they're there to have fun, they're there to be loud. They come home late and they party. I mean, that's why they're
Yes.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is if you live in that building, even though it may be allowed, all of a sudden people can start to get upset, and then they can get rid of it. So I would hate for someone to invest on something in an older building and not have that hotel component, and then something changes and it kills their investment. The better way to do it is to invest, and we have older buildings too that have that hotel component where
So,
you know for sure it'll be allowed.
okay. So, there's a question, right? What is a typically cost involved for a property management company?
So it varies. So some are 10% and then some are more. Sometimes it can go up to 20, 30%. It just
Really?
depends on the building and what you're getting. You have some buildings, newer buildings where they have an in-house staff and they're going to be able to get much higher rents than you would be able to get. So I would recommend comparing both. Like with the buildings, we can give you, obviously, if you're buying new construction, we can tell you, okay, you can speak to them. That's what they would be. And then we have other companies that we recommend that maximize their goal. Their main goal is to make sure every day that property is rented, whether it's rented one day for $100 and the next day it's 500. They want to make sure it's rented. They have their algorithms, so they get someone last minute. It's like filling a seat on an airplane.
Okay. So, you have like it's more of a they manage the Airbnb part, they do the cleaning part,
They
they
do
do the
everything.
renting. Okay.
Everything.
Okay, that's good to know. And what about like somebody who's having a property in Homestead, as we talk about? It's not a high rise, it's like low density. Will the same companies is the same typically 10% property management cost we are looking into?
Yeah, you could do that. You could get the 10%. You could have higher end companies do it. The 10% is going to do like the basics. They're going to do the
Okay.
basics, like, they'll call you if something's wrong. They'll tell you, they'll manage the rent. The other companies, about 25%, give or take, will do much more. They'll maximize your rent. It's like a partnership rather than a helper.
Oh, okay. So it's like company specific thing. It's good to know. So basically, it's what all the packages you need, the bundles you're creating, you have to pay more on that. It's like starting from
Right,
10% to 25% range.
right,
Okay, so
exactly.
there's a question, right? So who does the grass cutting, lawn moving, and if you have tenants in
So that's
Florida?
a good question. So I wanted to go back. I'll answer that question in a second. So when I go back to those other fees, those fees would include like Airbnb fees as well. It's not that fee plus adding Airbnb fees. That would be included in the fees, like the more expensive, management companies. As far as who pays for the rent, I mean, the grass or the lawn, I mean, the lawn, the yard, the pool, all these other things, that could be specific to the contract of the lease. It's optional. It's negotiable.
Okay, so even the tenants can do it, or landlord's property management company.
Yeah, so typically what we do, if someone is starting off doing it, and so say their budget is a little bit tight and they don't want to spend the 10 or 25 or whatever percent, they have the time where they feel they can manage it. This is what I would suggest. The first thing you would do is the lease, you would probably include a number where you pay for the lawn and stuff, but you include that in the price of the rent, right? You want to make sure it gets done because trying to get it done later is a headache, right? Say, because you don't live here, if your lawn hasn't got cut for like 4 to 6 months, it could be very expensive later in the future. You could get fines and all that. So as far as how much does it cost to do like lawn here, I would say probably $50 to $100, say $100 a month to manage that. If there's a swimming pool, I would say another $100, count that into the rent. Another thing that you could do if you don't want to do a management company is you can do a home warranty. So there are different companies. There's one called American Home Shield. There's quite a few. If you Google home warranties, basically what happens is they cover, it's like a warranty of a car. They're going to cover like the plumbing, the electrical, all these other things. And there's going to be a deductible. So what you can do in a lease is say that if there's something that pops up, the tenant pays the first 75 or $100, the landlord pays the rest. So basically that deductible would be paid for by the tenant, and then the owner of the property, the person that lives in Canada or wherever they live, they can just go online, set up the appointment. That person will contact the tenant, set it up, the deductible will be paid, and it's done.
Makes sense, right? And then obviously to add on this, Amit, so as you are there, you have been there for more than 40 years and you are into the real estate industry, you have a huge team. So do you have those all those network available, someone who's looking to buy, who's looking to invest, attorneys, management companies, contractors, do you have all those network available in Miami?
Yeah, we do. We have multiple options for each. You know, our goal is to not force you to feel like we're telling you you have to use this person. We just want to give you as many options as you feel comfortable with.
Okay, so that's great, right? So you already have the network. So somebody who's looking to invest, definitely they can touch base with you, right? And then before we part, I think there's a question, right? How's the offers going these days? Is it like conditional or it's firm? I think we already discussed about that, right?
Yeah, so it's changed a bit. In the past, you would need to offer like asking price or above. You'd probably need to get rid of your inspection contingency. And if it, you would probably have to say you're paying over appraised value. And if you were financing, you had a much less chance of getting your offer accepted. Now, almost every deal, there are inspections, there are appraisal contingencies, and if it's finance, it's fine. So as a buyer, it's a much easier market than it was like in January.
Makes sense, right? So, Amit, there's a question, right? Is there any standard lease that you need to follow in Florida real estate market when you're leasing to tenants?
So we do have a standard lease, but anyone can adjust it. You can have an attorney write it. We just do that for simplicity, just like on real estate contracts. We have a standard one. So you can use the standard one, or you could just make a separate one. You don't have to use one or the other.
Okay, so you can extend it basically. You can write your additional clauses into it.
Yes.
That makes sense, right? And then, which is there's another question. If somebody have to move for themselves, which community is more livable away from the hustle and bustle, but definitely connected to the limelight of Miami or Florida?
So I'll give you an example of where I live. I live in a place called Pinecrest. My wife and I live in Pinecrest. Pinecrest is it's suburban. There's single family homes. Our yards are decent size. Yards are like half an acre to a full acre. And most of the homes have swimming pools. Homes are like probably 3 to 8,000 square feet. So they're decent sizes.
Okay.
Where I live, probably about 25 minutes from South Beach, so not that far. And I'm also my neighborhood is like you see people walking their dogs, riding their bikes, and neighbors saying hi to each other. So we have like those type of neighborhoods. And then if you go it depends on your age group, right? If someone is a little bit older, I mean younger than me, and they want to be more the lifestyle and all that, there's a place called Coral Gables or Brickell. These are probably like 15 minutes from me, and the same thing. Both areas are nice. They're in the middle. The good thing about Miami is there's a lot of the transportation, the highways can get you from one place to the next pretty quickly.
Okay, so it's well connected throughout. Obviously, we didn't talk about the transportation system. Obviously, if it's a big city, there'll be buses, there'll be train, and I think there are two international airports in Miami.
Yeah, so we have like a main one, Miami International Airport. We have some smaller airports as well.
Okay,
Most of the people go to Miami International Airport, but there are a lot of other little like satellite ones. And then there's one in Fort Lauderdale as well, which isn't maybe that's maybe 45 minutes away.
makes sense. And how is the tourist coming in this weather? As we talked, November to March is the best time to visit Miami, to live there, to enjoy the weather. What about in today's market? Like, is it too hot? Like, is the tourist still coming to the beaches, or it's all local people?
You know, when developers do their numbers for occupancy rates for like short-term rentals and stuff, the ones that are optimistic, which I don't believe, say the occupancy rate is like 80% is occupied, but on realistically it's about 70%. So one of the things that's helping us a whole lot now is are that people are working remotely, right? And because people are working remotely, they'll stay here for a month or two and they'll come here because it doesn't they don't not everyone wants to be here when everyone else is here because it's more expensive, right?
Okay.
So someone will come during the summer when it's hotter, but they want to enjoy Miami when prices are less.
Okay, so that's a good thought. So you're saying around 70% occupancy is still there throughout,
Yeah,
irrespective of the weather.
yeah.
Makes sense, right? I think we were just at the end, last minute, right? Uh, uh, on the show, right? Anything you want to add about Miami, about real estate? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say this, get to know Miami well, you know, and like I said, we have a guide. It's called Miami Neighborhood Guide.com. And I'm not trying to get your business or anything. I want you to get to know the area first. If
Yes,
you know
that's
the
good.
area and you want to move here, both of us will do whatever we can to make it happen. But before anything, we want to make sure that you really feel comfortable coming here. I love Miami. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, but that's my bias, you know.
Makes sense, right? And last thought, Amit? What is the best the point of contact, like any number or any website, any email, if somebody is looking to discuss about Florida or Miami
Yeah,
in
so
particular?
thanks for asking. Our website is called allinmiami.com. So ALLIN, and then Miami, allinmiami.com.
Makes sense. That's the best, right? So thanks, Amit. Thanks for taking your time out and coming to our another podcast. Such a pleasure and talking to about Miami, Florida, in particular about investing, buying. So much educating information you have shared. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. Take care. Bye.